Welcome back to Fab Automotive Detailing. You guys, this past Saturday I released a video on how to change your grease in basically a corded polisher. But this is a Max Shine 15 millimeter DA long throw polisher. I showed you how to replace the grease in this. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and replace the grease in my Ryobi battery operated 18 volt machine. And I wasn't planning on making a video about this. Obviously I've already got it apart because that way I couldn't show you guys how I took it apart. Once I opened it up, I realized, I probably need to make a video because when I made the video about this, a lot of people bought this machine. I think I was actually the very first person to put a video out on this on YouTube. But I know a lot of people bought the machine. A lot of people love the machine. I've always noticed that it seems to run, it's really hard to explain, like it's not getting greased well, like gear to gear chatter. And once I got this apart, I realized, well, now I see why it makes the noise that it does make the noise. So we can't do it before and after. Obviously, I've already got it apart. But what I want to do as far as this video is concerned is bring to you guys is show you how to get this apart. Because I was thinking, well, I need to replace the grease in this. And I started looking at it and I could not figure out how to get this off of here. Because, let me show you guys. This weight is different. This is not your typical weight right here. And you have to be able to get these screws out, but then you can't take this head off to get to these screws. So I was really confused. So I ended up taking all these bolts out. I couldn't even get the plastic to separate. There is a bolt right here to take the head off. I could not get the head to separate from right here. So I was really kind of dumbfounded. But then I started looking. I hope I can show you guys this. Right inside, it's gonna be really hard to show. Right here, there's like a circle. You see that? Well, I noticed that circle's pretty close to lining up with this. So what I did, I took a drill, and then see that big hole right there? I drilled that circle out, and then I kind of, I don't even know if this is a word, wallered it out so that if I pick it up, now you can see the hole. If I pick it up and move it, if I move it this way, it's not right, but if I move it that way, it's good. So once I got the screws out of the plastic, I pulled this up, I drilled the hole, and now I could get all of those bolts out, and now I've got this completely out. So if you've struggled with that, if you've tried to repack the grease on your Ryobi machine, hopefully that will help you guys out right there. One thing I do like about this, though, it does have an O-ring. A lot of machines don't have that, so make sure you grease that O-ring up really good before you push it back down in there. Otherwise, you can rip that O-ring, and then grease can start coming out. But if you guys notice, look at this. No grease. That thing is drier than a popcorn fart. There's absolutely no grease on there. A little bit of grease around here. Nothing at all in the gear. And then in here, let me get the flashlight so you can see a little better. Look, that thing is completely dry. This would be the pinion gear. I went ahead and spun it so we can get it to the other side. Look at that. Absolutely no grease. So that is why this machine seemed to me like it had not a grinding sound, but more or less like a metal on metal sound. So if you have this machine and you want your machine to last, you need to change the grease. So let me go over something really quick. I don't know where my wrench is for this. It came with one. My wife is, I'm really good about saving boxes. My wife is really good about making me throw boxes away. And I think the box got thrown away with the wrench in it. So I'm going to show you guys, you need a skinny wrench. So this is your typical wrench. Right here, you can see this is a Husky. You can get this at Home Depot. Look at how much skinnier that is. But then I've got this Matco one because I was a mechanic. It's even skinnier than the Husky. But you need a skinny wrench, a thin wrench. This wrench right here will not go between the pad and this to get the vacuum plate off. You have to have a thin wrench to get in there to hold that and then to take your backing plate off. If you don't have the tool, like me, I don't have it, you need a thin wrench. 14 millimeter is what you need. If you can buy an individual, then that's all you need is a 14 millimeter. And then you need a T20 Torx. And that's all you need is a wrench, a T-handle, and a Phillips head. Number 2 Phillips head, and then you're good to go. What we're gonna do in this video, I know I just put a video out doing this, but I thought we'd go ahead and change the grease in this, put it back together, and see if it sounds any different at all to me. All right, so all you need is some Q-tips. I buy these at Harbor Freight. It's 325 pieces, comes with some massive ones if you have really big ears. Obviously, that's a joke. But small ones, big ones, I use these for jobs like this. They're cheap. I think they're like $7 or $8 at Harbor Freight, nothing big. But the main thing is to get as much of this old grease out as possible. Now, my last video, somebody mentioned, well, you should have used brake clean. Yes, brake clean would have got all the grease out. I love brake clean. As a professional mechanic for a little over 20 years, I love the smell of non-chlorinated brake clean. Now, that sounds crazy, but I love the smell of it. Used it every single day. It's good, but it can actually deteriorate the plastic. And I didn't want to deteriorate the plastic on the other polisher. I obviously don't want to deteriorate it on this. Is the grease going to be compatible with the Amsoil grease I use? I don't know, but being that I'll be getting rid of about 98% of the grease, I'm perfectly fine with that. I've done this for years, and I've never had an issue with any of my polishers after doing it. Now, for the first couple swipes, this is some really crappy grease. There's actually what feels like moisture in this grease. But if you have any polisher, any brand, most likely, I know Griot's Garage uses a really good grease in theirs, but most brands, they go cheap on the grease, which is the one thing on the machine they should not go cheap on, but they do. So the best thing to do is replace the grease as soon as you get the machine. But I'm just going to use this Q-tip. I'm going to get in here and just get this grease out. Now, one thing that's nice, if you watch my other video, you notice this grease is pretty clean. The other video in the Max Shine, it looked like it had some metal in it. Get in here and get as much of this grease out as I possibly can. It is a messy job. Now, they did put a lot of grease in it, but the grease ain't doing anything. So you need a good high temperature grease that's not going to break down under temperature, because you got to remember these machines run constantly. When you're using it constantly, you imagine how hot it is getting in here. How hot this bearing right here is getting under a load while you're putting pressure down. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, go ahead and get all this grease off the edge of this. Pretty easy to do. Just use your Q-tip and just pull the grease right off of it. The very little bit that there is. Now, there is going to be grease underneath this. There's nothing you can do about that without taking that snap ring off, taking the gear off. We're not doing all that. It's really not that big of a deal. But make sure, once again, you apply a little bit of grease around this O-ring. Okay, so when I grease, I just use my grease gun. Once again, another Ryobi tool. I love Ryobi's tools. Just use my grease gun, and I start on the bearing first. Make sure I get it kind of packed down in there. Then the gear. All over it. Okay, now I go on the gear out here. Not going to use a ton on this. And we're just going to take, this is why you want to make sure you wear gloves. Harley, leave the grease gun alone. You won't like the taste of that. Okay, just get it all over the gear. Put it right here where the bearing's going to ride. We'll come back and do the O-ring in just a minute. Now, I want to push this grease down in here because it will get air pockets. Make sure we got good grease all the way through. Okay, so now I have just a little bit of grease, as you can see, on my finger, and I'm just going to rub that around this O-ring. So let's put her back together. As you see, the gear is completely covered. And I know now this thing's going to pick up grease. You can only put this on one way. You see up here. So try to hold on to it. I don't know what my dog just went running after. May have to move the gear a little bit. Maybe. There we go. May take a little bit to get this thing to snap down in here. There we go. Okay, it is seated down in. So we should be good to go. Make sure our bolt holes are lined up. Okay, looks like they're all lined up. You do not need Loctite. And remember, you are going into aluminum, so you do not want to go all crazy when you put these bolts back in. And it's going to be the longer bolts. Torx. Hopefully they'll stay on. That's why I like to use T-handle also. It makes it a lot harder for you to put a ton of pressure down. If you use a ratchet, it'd be super simple to strip these bolts out because you can see how tiny these threads are. Let me see if I can show you guys. Why can't I ever get this to show? Very fine thread. Make sure you have them all started before you start tightening them down. Otherwise you'll get, you know, 3 of them tight and then the 4th one won't even go in. Won't even line up. Okay, we're ready to tighten them all down. Doesn't have to be crazy tight. You're gonna go in kind of a crisscross pattern. If you guys enjoy these types of videos, let me know. Move the counterweight. This way I can show you guys why I kind of couldn't figure out how to get this thing apart at first. You can see the bolt back there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. But there's no way you're going to get a tool in that area at that angle to get that bolt out. That's why you have to drill the hole right there, as you can see, right here, right by my finger, to get it out. And just make sure you hold this up so you don't drill through your actual tool. Okay, so now the shroud is on. All we have to do now is put our backing plate on, which is very, very simple to do. But you're going to need your wrench, okay? And you're going to put your wrench right on there just like that. And you're just going to, it is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, it is down, it made contact. I'm just going to, that's it. It doesn't have to be crazy, crazy tight. But as you can see, there's no way that wrench is going to go into there. Let's start this thing up, see if I did everything right. I do have a fear. So when I took all these bolts out and I tried to separate this case, I was able to separate this case all the way up to the neck. And I could not get it to go any further, but this button fell out, this button fell out. So I had to get them back in. Hopefully I got everything back together right. Yeah, that's it. Let's just see if it's quieter, if it's smoother, if it did anything at all. We're going to start out at 3,000 RPMs, which is the very first speed. I can tell you right now, that's already way smoother and quieter. Oh, that sounds so good. 3,800. Now these batteries vibrate, listen. You just got to... 5,800, 6,800, 7,500. This thing is running strong. Look how smooth this is. It's not vibrating at all, or not in my hand. Get this battery. That made a massive difference on this Ryobi. I would say that's the biggest difference I've ever had in a machine, just by replacing the grease. Now, I wish there was a way to make this thing stop making noise. I want to start this thing up one more time. I'm going to hold the battery this time while we let it run, so we don't hear that noise. 3,000, 38, 48, 58, 68, 75. Man, this thing is running so good. Now listen to the battery. So annoying. In fact, when I'm polishing on a car with it, I'm always holding the battery and I'm holding it tight because it makes so much noise when you're using it. You guys, I am thoroughly impressed by that right there. If you have this machine right here, you've got to change your grease. It is a world difference. Use a good high temperature grease. I cannot stress that enough. You don't have, I use Amsoil. You don't have to use Amsoil. Lucas makes a really good one. A lot of companies make really good high temperature greases. They're usually red when they're high temperature, but wow, what a difference that made. I'm excited about this because of all the machines that I have ever taken the grease out of, put new grease in, I always swore that they were quieter and definitely smooth. A lot of them are smoother. A lot of them it doesn't make a big difference on. But then I did the decibel meter on the last video that I put out Saturday, and it didn't make that machine quieter. It actually made about a decibel louder, which is pretty amazing to me. This one, just by hearing it, I know that it's quieter, and it's so smooth. I mean, it does not vibrate in your hands at all now. If you could get rid of this battery noise, this machine right here would just be really quiet for the most part. I mean, obviously you're gonna have motor noise, that's normal, but it's really quiet otherwise. Very happy with it, very smooth to operate. I can put on the lowest speed right here and just leave it on this table. It doesn't go nowhere. Now you can't do it once you speed it up. It's gonna start vibrating a little bit. But it's not falling over, like, you know, like really, really vibrating. I'm like I said a minute ago, I'm thoroughly impressed by this. It's gonna make your machine last longer, it's gonna run smoother, and it's gonna run quieter. That is all three big bonuses when you're using a polisher. If you're using this polisher for, you know, 4 or 5 hours, that's big. That is big, because as hot as it's gonna get inside here, you put a good high temperature grease in here, a grease that's gonna stay stable, it's gonna stay, I say sticky, but it's gonna actually stay on the gears and keep those gears from having metal on metal on metal contact. Now you have the grease in there to take that metal on metal contact away. That's why it's so much smoother and so much quieter. But hopefully this video is helpful for you. If you have this machine, now you know what you can do to repack it. I've never repacked or put new grease in a battery operated. I've always done it on corded. But I can tell you that it's pretty much the same process, same gears, your ring gear, your pinion gear, all that stuff. Just get a good high quality, high temperature grease, and you're going to be good to go. And you're going to be so happy that you did this if you have this polisher right here. So I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video and checking it out. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, join the Fab family. We'd love to have you. We'll see you in the next video.